Ambassador Sarah Chun stood before the crystalline walls of the Galactic Council chambers, her hands steady despite the weight of what she was about to learn. For 300 years, humanity had been members of this grand alliance of civilizations, contributing their unique talents to the greater good of the galaxy. They had shared their art, their science, their boundless curiosity with over 2,000 different species. The council chamber hummed with the voices of beings from across the stars. The Zephyrians floated in their gas-filled spheres, their translucent bodies pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. The massive Croton representatives sat on reinforced platforms, their stone-like skin bearing the scars of countless battles fought in the name of galactic peace. The insectoid Vex clicked and chittered among themselves, their compound eyes reflecting the chamber's soft light. Sarah had always felt pride walking among these beings. Humanity had earned their place here through decades of proving themselves worthy. They had solved the Andromedan plague, developed faster-than-light communication networks that connected distant worlds, and their diplomats had prevented 3 major wars through patient negotiation. The galaxy was better because humans were part of it. Council Speaker Varix, an ancient ethereal whose energy form had guided the council for over a millennium, began the session with what seemed like routine business. Trade agreements between the Outer Rim colonies, mining rights in the Vega system, standard bureaucratic matters that kept thousands of worlds functioning in harmony. Then came the announcement that would shatter everything Sarah believed about their place in the universe. The Council recognizes the motion brought forth by the coalition of ancient races. Varix's voice resonated through every translator in the chamber. The matter of humanity's continued membership requires immediate attention. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Around the chamber, she noticed something she had never seen before. The representatives were not looking at her with their usual mixture of respect and curiosity. Instead, their expressions ranged from cold indifference to barely concealed hostility. The Croton Prime Minister, Goran the Unyielding, rose from his platform. His voice was like grinding stone when he spoke. For too long, we have allowed this young species to believe they belong among us. Humanity has grown bold, thinking themselves equal to races that have existed since before their son was born. A Vex representative chittered in agreement. They spread too quickly. Their colonies multiply like spores. They consume resources at an alarming rate and ask questions that should not be asked. Sarah's mind raced. What questions? What had humanity done wrong? They had followed every protocol, respected every treaty. Their expansion had been measured and approved by this very council. Varix continued. The ancient coalition presents evidence that humanity poses a long-term threat to galactic stability. Their rapid technological advancement, combined with their aggressive territorial expansion and their unusual capacity for violence, makes them unsuitable for continued council membership. The words hit Sarah like physical blows. Aggressive territorial expansion? Every human colony had been established with full council approval. Their technological advancement was shared freely with all member species. And violence? Humans have been among the most peaceful council members for generations. Furthermore, a crystalline archon representative chimed, their voice like breaking glass. Humanity's emotional instability and unpredictable nature make them dangerous allies. They form attachments too readily and react with excessive force when those attachments are threatened. Sarah stood, her diplomatic training warring with rising anger. Council Speaker, I must protest these accusations. Humanity has been a loyal member of this council for 3 centuries. We have contributed immeasurably to galactic peace and prosperity. Our emotional connections to others have helped us broker peace between warring species. Our capacity for violence has only ever been used in defense of council interests. Goran's laugh was like an avalanche. Defense? Your species turned a moon into a weapon to stop the Hive invasion. You obliterated an entire stellar system to prevent the Void Plague from spreading. You call this defensive? We saved billions of lives. Sarah protested. The council approved both actions. The council feared what you might do if we refused, whispered a shadowy umbral representative. Your species' capacity for destruction, when motivated, is concerning. The truth began to dawn on Sarah. This was not about anything humanity had done wrong. This was about fear. The other species had grown afraid of what humans might become, what they might do if they ever decided the council was no longer worth their loyalty. Varix's energy form pulsed with finality. The vote is called, all in favor of expelling humanity from the Galactic Council. Sarah watched in horror as representative after representative cast their vote. Species that humanity had helped, had saved, had called friends for centuries. The Zephyrians, whose homeworld humans had helped terraform. The Meridians, whose civil war had been ended by human mediators. The aquatic Nereids, whose entire population had been relocated by human engineers when their star went nova. One by one, they voted to cast humanity out. The final tally was devastating. Of the 2,047 member species, only 12 voted against expulsion. 12 species stood by humanity when it mattered most. The motion passes, Varix announced. Humanity is hereby expelled from the Galactic Council. All treaties, trade agreements, and military cooperation pacts are terminated immediately. Human vessels have 48 hours to evacuate council space. Sarah stood alone in the center of the chamber as the other representatives began to file out. 300 years of partnership, of friendship, of shared dreams and struggles ended with a simple vote. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound could have. But as she watched these beings who had once called humans their allies walk away without even meeting her eyes, Sarah felt something else growing inside her. Something that would prove far more dangerous to the Council than they could possibly imagine. They had feared humanity's capacity for destruction when motivated. They had just given humans the ultimate motivation. The emergency session of the United Earth Congress had been called within hours of Ambassador Chen's devastating report. Representatives from every human colony, every space station, every mining outpost across human space had gathered either in person or through quantum link. The great hall buzzed with angry voices speaking in dozens of languages, but all expressing the same sentiment: betrayal. President Elena Vasquez called for order, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had led humanity through the Titan Rebellion and the Proxima Crisis. We have heard Ambassador Chen's report. The Council has made their position clear. The question before us now is simple. How do we respond? Admiral Marcus Torres, head of the Human Defense Force, was the first to speak. His weathered face bore the scars of battles fought in defense of Council interests. They want us gone from Council space within 48 hours. That means abandoning 17 colonies with a combined population of 40 million people. Our trade routes, our research stations, our entire infrastructure outside the Sol system, and our core territories. We can't simply abandon those people, declared Dr. Yuki Tanaka from the Centauri Research Collective. Some of those colonies have been established for over a century. They're home to fourth and fifth generation settlers who have never seen Earth. A representative from the Mars Industrial Complex stood up. The economic impact alone would be catastrophic. 60% of our rare Earth elements come from mines in what's now forbidden territory. Our manufacturing capacity would be crippled. President Vasquez nodded grimly. The Council is counting on exactly that. They want us to come crawling back, begging for readmission on their terms. They want to make us into a client state, subservient to their will. The hall erupted in angry shouts. Humans had never been good at accepting dictates from authority, especially authority they considered illegitimate. It was a trait that had driven them to explore space in the first place, to push boundaries that other species accepted as permanent. Ambassador Chun, who had remained silent throughout the heated discussions, finally stood. The hall quieted to hear the woman who had witnessed their humiliation firsthand. "There's something else," she said quietly. "Something I learned from a 12 species that voted with us. The Ketheri ambassador told me this has been planned for over 50 years. They've been watching us, studying us, waiting for the right moment to act. The silence was deafening. They're afraid, she continued. Not of what we've done, but of what we might do. They look at our rate of technological advancement, our territorial expansion, our population growth, and they see a threat to their established order. General Patricia Hayes from the Colonial Defense Force slammed her fist on the table. Let them be afraid. We've done nothing but good for the galaxy. We've saved countless lives, prevented wars, shared our discoveries freely. And this is how they repay us. They fear our potential, Chin said. The Ketheri ambassador showed me classified council projections. At our current rate of growth and advancement, we would be the dominant force in the galaxy within 2,000 years. Not through conquest, but through simple expansion and innovation. President Vasquez processed this information. So this isn't about punishment. It's about prevention. They're trying to clip our wings before we can truly spread them. The president's chief advisor, Dr. James Wright, leaned forward. Ma'am, we need to consider our options carefully. We could comply with their demands, retreat to our core systems, and try to negotiate readmission later. The suggestion was met with a chorus of angry voices. Admiral Torres stood up, his voice cutting through the noise. With respect, Dr. Wright, that's exactly what they want. They want us docile, contained, dependent on their goodwill. They want to turn humanity into another client species. Then, what do you suggest, Admiral? Wright asked. Torres looked around the room, meeting the eyes of representatives from across human space. We give them what they claim to want. We leave council space. But we don't come back begging. We come back as equals. Meaning what exactly? President Vasquez asked. The Admiral's smile was grim. We show them why they were right to fear us. Not through aggression, but through excellence. We take our people, our knowledge, our resources, and we build something better than what they've offered us. Dr. Tanaka shook her head. Admiral, you're talking about going up against a galactic civilization with thousands of species and a history spanning millions of years. We're one species that's barely been in space for 4 centuries. That's exactly why we can do it, Admiral Torres replied. They've grown comfortable, stagnant. Their civilization is built on maintaining the status quo. We're built on pushing boundaries, on refusing to accept limitations. President Vasquez stood, and the hall fell silent. The Admiral raises an interesting point. The Council sees our rapid advancement as a threat. Perhaps it's time they understood just how right they are. She activated the main display, showing a map of known space. Human territories were highlighted in blue, a relatively small cluster compared to the vast expanse controlled by Council species. Ladies and gentlemen, the President said, we have 48 hours to evacuate Council space. But who says we have to stay evacuated? The meaning of her words sank in slowly. Ambassador Chun was the first to understand. You're talking about coming back, not as Council members, but as competitors. I'm talking about showing them what humans do best, Vasquez replied. We adapt. We overcome. We thrive in conditions that would destroy other species. They want us gone? Fine. We'll leave. But we'll come back stronger than they ever imagined possible. Admiral Torres grinned. Isolation doesn't weaken humans. It strengthens us. It forces us to innovate, to become self-sufficient, to push our limits. The evacuation begins immediately, President Vasquez announced. But this is not a retreat. This is a strategic withdrawal. We'll take our time, build our strength, advance our technology. And when we're ready, when we've become everything they feared we could be, we'll return to the galactic stage. Dr. Wright looked troubled. Ma'am, you're talking about a generation-long project. Maybe longer. Good things take time, Doctor, the President replied. The Council has had millions of years to build their civilization. We'll do it better in centuries. As the session broke up and representatives began the massive task of coordinating humanity's exodus from Council space, President Vasquez remained behind with her closest advisors. Elena, Admiral Torres said quietly, you know what this means. We're essentially declaring independence from galactic civilization. There's no going back from this. The president nodded. Marcus, 300 years ago, they invited us to join their council as junior partners. We accepted gratefully, eager to learn from our betters. Today, they've shown us we have no betters. She looked out at the stars visible through the hall's transparent dome. When we return, it won't be as supplicants begging for acceptance. It will be as humans. And they'll learn what that word really means. The evacuation of council space began within the hour. But even as human ships loaded with refugees and salvaged equipment began their journey to the outer territories, a new project was already beginning. Not just the evacuation of a defeated species, but the forging of something the galaxy had never seen before. The evacuation fleet stretched across 3 star systems, a massive convoy of ships carrying the hopes and dreams of 40 million humans away from everything they had known. Captain Lisa Park commanded the UES Indomitable, one of the heavy transport vessels loaded with families from the agricultural colonies of Kepler, 442b. She watched through her viewport as the last shuttles lifted off from the planet's surface, carrying the final evacuees to safety. "Captain," her communications officer called out, "we're receiving a transmission from the Croton Patrol Fleet. They're ordering us to accelerate our departure schedule." Lisa's jaw tightened. The Crotons had been among the most vocal supporters of humanity's expulsion, and now they were treating the evacuation like a military operation. "Tell them we'll leave when we're ready. We have 48 hours, and we're going to use every minute of it." On the planet below, the last human colonists were conducting their own form of rebellion. Instead of simply abandoning their homes, they were systematically dismantling everything of value. The massive atmosphere processors that had turned this world into a garden were being carefully disassembled and loaded onto cargo ships. The orbital manufacturing stations were being stripped down to their component atoms. "If they want us gone," muttered Chief Engineer Rodriguez as he supervised the removal of a quantum computer core, "they can have their empty worlds back." The same scene was playing out across 17 star systems. Humans had always been builders, but they were proving equally adept at controlled deconstruction. Nothing useful was being left behind. Agricultural seeds, genetic samples, manufacturing equipment, research data, even the soil that had been enriched by centuries of careful cultivation. All of it was being carefully cataloged and transported. Admiral Torres observed the evacuation from his flagship, the UES Defiance. His tactical displays showed a logistics operation unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. The Council species, despite their technological advancement, had never developed the kind of rapid mobilization capabilities humans had perfected through centuries of military operations and emergency responses. "Sir," reported his logistics chief, "the Meridian ambassador is requesting a meeting. They're offering to mediate with the Council for our readmission." Torres almost laughed. "Tell the ambassador that humanity appreciates their concern, but we're no longer interested in Council membership." The truth was more complex than that. The 12 species that had voted against humanity's expulsion had been reaching out constantly, trying to convince human leadership to reconsider. They feared what would happen to the galaxy without humanity's stabilizing influence. Who would broker the peace treaties? Who would develop the technologies that solved intractable problems? Who would ask the uncomfortable questions that led to necessary changes? But Admiral Torres had seen President Vasquez's classified reports. The evacuation was only the first phase of something much larger. Hidden manufacturing facilities in the asteroid belts of human space had been operating at maximum capacity for weeks, building ships and equipment that the Council had never seen. Research stations in the furthest reaches of human territory were conducting experiments that pushed the boundaries of known science. Humanity wasn't just leaving Council space. They were preparing to transcend it. Dr. Sarah Kim, head of the Prometheus Research Initiative, was overseeing one such project from a hidden facility in the Oort cloud beyond Pluto. Her team had been working on theoretical physics problems that most Council species considered unsolvable. Faster-than-light travel without hyperspace gates. Quantum manufacturing at the atomic level. artificial intelligence systems that could process information at speeds that made traditional computers look like stone tools. "Doctor," her assistant called out, "the new prototype is ready for testing." Sarah looked at the device that had consumed 3 years of her life. It was smaller than a briefcase, but contained processing power that exceeded the central computers of most Council worlds. More importantly, it was completely incompatible with Council technology standards. This was human engineering, built from human principles, designed to human specifications. "Begin the test sequence," she ordered. Across human space, similar projects were reaching completion. The evacuation from Council space was providing the perfect cover for the greatest technological leap in human history. While the Council species congratulated themselves on removing a potential threat, humanity was proving that their fears had been justified, just not in the way they expected. Captain Park's convoy had finally cleared the outer edge of the Kepler system when she received an encrypted message from Earth. The contents made her smile for the first time since the evacuation began. "All units," she broadcast to her convoy, "we've received new orders. We're not heading directly to Tau Ceti as originally planned. Command has identified a series of unexplored systems beyond the galactic rim. We're going to be pioneers again." The response from her convoy was immediate and enthusiastic. These people had lost their homes, but they hadn't lost their spirit. The prospect of exploring virgin territory, of building something new and uniquely human, excited them in ways that the comfortable life in Council space never had. What the Council didn't understand was that humanity had always thrived on challenges. Every major advance in human history had come from facing impossible odds and refusing to accept defeat. The evacuation wasn't weakening them. It was reminding them of who they really were. On Earth, President Vasquez was meeting with her cabinet and the leaders of the evacuation effort. The holographic displays around the room showed the progress of the Great Exodus, but also something else: the preliminary results of Project Renaissance. "Ma'am," reported Dr. Wright, "the numbers are extraordinary. Our technological advancement rate has increased by 300% since the evacuation began. The pressure of rebuilding our entire civilization in hostile territory is forcing innovations we never would have attempted otherwise." Admiral Torres nodded. "It's what we've always done best. When the going gets tough, humans get creative. The Council wanted to contain us because they feared our potential. They just gave us the motivation to realize it." President Vasquez studied the data flowing across her screens. New ship designs that could cross the galaxy in weeks instead of months. Manufacturing processes that could turn raw asteroids into complete habitats in days. Weapons systems that made their current military look primitive by comparison. "How long before Phase 2? She asked. "Conservative estimates put us at 18 months, Torres replied. "Optimistic projections suggest 12. The president smiled. "The Council thought 48 hours was enough time to break us. They're about to learn that 48 hours was just enough time to set us free." As the last human ships crossed out of Council space and into the great unknown, they carried with them not just the populations of 17 worlds, but the dreams and determination of an entire species. The Council had intended their exile as a punishment. Instead, they had given humanity the greatest gift possible, the chance to become everything they were meant to be. Behind them, Council space seemed larger and emptier than ever before. The absence of human voices in the Council chambers, human innovations in the research centers, human mediation in the diplomatic corps was already being felt. The galaxy was discovering what it had lost. But ahead of the human fleet lay infinite possibilities. New worlds to explore, new challenges to overcome, new heights to reach. The Council had feared what humanity might become if left unchecked. They were about to find out 18 months had passed since humanity's exodus from Council space, and the galaxy was beginning to show the strain. The Zephyrian Archer and Trade War had erupted into open conflict without human mediators to broker peace. The crystalline plague had emerged in the outer rim, and Without human researchers to develop countermeasures, 3 systems have been placed under permanent quarantine. Most troubling of all, the ancient Void Reapers have begun stirring in the dark spaces between galaxies, and the Council's traditional defensive strategies were proving inadequate. Council Speaker Varix floated in his private chamber, his energy form flickering with patterns that would have been recognized as deep concern by any human observer. The other Council species had their own ways of expressing emotion, but none read the subtle signs as clearly as humanity had. It was one of 1,000 small things the Council was learning to miss. "Speaker," came the voice of his aide, "the emergency session is ready to begin." Varix drifted into the Council chambers, noting the empty spaces where human representatives had once sat. The galaxy's problems seemed to multiply in their absence. The irony was not lost on him that the species they had expelled for being too dangerous was exactly what they needed now. Goran the Unyielding was the first to speak, his stone-like features showing more cracks than Varix remembered. "The Void Reapers have taken the Epsilon sector. Our conventional weapons are useless against their quantum-shifted vessels. The humans' gravitational manipulation technology could have stopped them." A Vex representative clicked nervously. "The crystalline plague has evolved again. It's now affecting silicon-based life forms as well as carbon-based ones. Human biotechnology was the only thing that could adapt fast enough to counter such rapid mutation." The complaints went on for hours. Every crisis seemed to highlight another way that humanity's absence was being felt. But Varix knew the real reason for this emergency session wasn't about the problems they were facing now. It was about the intelligence reports that had begun filtering in from the Galactic Rim. "Honored Council," Varix said, his voice carrying the weight of his concerns, "we have received troubling reports from our deep space monitoring stations. There is significant activity in the unexplored regions beyond our borders." The chamber fell silent. They all knew what this meant. Admiral Kethvar of the Meridian Defense Force activated a holographic display. 3 days ago, our long-range sensors detected massive energy signatures from systems that our star charts show as uninhabited. The energy outputs are consistent with large-scale industrial operations. "Industrial operations on a scale we've never seen before," added a Narrated representative, their aquatic form rippling with agitation. "The power generation alone exceeds what most of our core worlds produce." Goran's voice rumbled like an earthquake. "You're saying the humans have been building something out there?" "That's exactly what we're saying," Admiral Kethvar replied. "But it's more than just building. Our analysts believe they've achieved breakthrough technologies. The energy signatures don't match anything in our databases." A crystalline Archon representative chimed in, their voice like breaking glass. "Perhaps we should consider re-establishing contact. The humans were always reasonable beings. Surely they would be willing to discuss renewed cooperation." The suggestion hung in the air like a toxic cloud. Everyone knew it was the sensible option, but admitting they needed the species they had expelled would be a humiliation beyond measure. That was when the message arrived. The Council's emergency communication system activated, displaying a simple text transmission that had somehow bypassed all their security protocols. The fact that their most advanced defensive systems had been penetrated without triggering a single alarm was almost as shocking as the message itself. "To the Galactic Council, we have received your request for assistance with the Void Reaper incursion and the crystalline plague outbreaks. While we appreciate your newfound recognition of our capabilities, we must respectfully decline to provide aid at this time. We are currently occupied with other matters. Perhaps you could ask one of the 2,000 species that voted for our expulsion? Regards, the Human Colonial Alliance." The chamber erupted in shocked voices. The message was polite, even diplomatic, but the underlying dismissal was clear. Worse, the fact that they had somehow monitored Council communications meant human technology had advanced far beyond what anyone had imagined possible. "How did they know about our request?" demanded a Vex representative. "We never sent any request." Varix's energy form pulsed with realization. "They're monitoring our communications. Everything we've said here, they've been listening to." The implications were staggering. Human technology had not just advanced, it had transcended the limitations that bound Council civilization. They were operating on a level that made the galaxy's most advanced species look primitive. 3 hours later, a second message arrived. This one included a data packet that made every xenobiologist in the Council wet themselves with excitement and terror in equal measure. Council species, we have included the complete genetic sequence and behavioral patterns of the crystalline plague, along with a comprehensive list of countermeasures. We developed this information in approximately 47 minutes. We are also attaching the gravitational resonance frequencies that will disrupt Void Reaper quantum shifting technology. This information is provided as a courtesy to the civilian populations who are suffering through no fault of their own. Do not interpret this assistance as an indication that we are interested in renewed diplomatic relations. The Human Colonial Alliance has moved beyond such considerations. Dr. Zathera, the Council's chief xenobiologist, stared at the data with her compound eyes wide with disbelief. This is impossible. It would take our best research teams decades to develop this kind of comprehensive analysis. They did it in less than an hour. Admiral Kethvar was studying the gravitational resonance data. This isn't just advanced science. This is revolutionary physics. They've fundamentally rewritten our understanding of how quantum mechanics interact with gravitational fields. But it was the final line of the message that sent a chill through every council member present. Do not interpret this assistance as an indication that we are interested in renewed diplomatic relations. The Human Colonial Alliance has moved beyond such considerations. Moved beyond such considerations. The humans were no longer interested in being part of galactic civilization. They had transcended the need for it. Varix floated alone in the chamber after the other representatives had left, processing the magnitude of what had just occurred. 18 months ago, the Council had expelled humanity out of fear of what they might become. Now, they had become exactly what the Council had feared, and, worse, they no longer cared about the Council's opinion. The humans had not just left Council space. They had evolved beyond it. The real question now was not whether the Council would invite humanity back. The question was whether humanity would consider the galaxy worth their attention when they decided to return. Because Varix had no doubt they would return. Humans always came back. The question was whether they would come back as friends, as conquerors, or as something else entirely. Something the galaxy had never seen before. Something that made the Council's fears look like the concerns of children playing with toys. The exile that was meant to contain humanity had instead unleashed them. And now, the galaxy was about to learn what that really meant. 2 years after their expulsion, humanity returned to galactic civilization. They didn't announce their arrival with diplomatic messages or request permission to enter Council space. They simply appeared. One moment, the Council's long-range sensors showed empty space at the edge of their territory. The next moment, a fleet materialized that redefined what the galaxy understood about power. The ships were unlike anything in the Council databases. They moved without engines, turned without thrusters, and generated energy signatures that broke every known law of physics. Most unsettling of all, they were beautiful, sleek, organic curves that seemed to flow through space like living creatures rather than manufactured vessels. Admiral Kethvar stared at his tactical displays in disbelief. How many ships are we detecting? That's the problem, sir, his sensor operator replied. The readings keep changing. Sometimes it shows 12 vessels, sometimes 1,200, sometimes 12,000. I think they're using some kind of dimensional folding technology. On the lead vessel, a ship that seemed to shift between existing and not existing depending on the observer's angle, Ambassador Sarah Chin stood on a bridge that bore no resemblance to the cramped command centers of her youth. The walls were transparent, providing a view of space that made her feel like she was flying through the cosmos naked, except for her thoughts. Ambassador, her AI companion spoke directly into her mind through neural interface. The Council is attempting to establish communication. They're using every frequency and protocol they know. Sarah smiled. The AI wasn't like the crude computer systems humans had used before their exile. It was a true artificial consciousness, born from human ingenuity, but possessed of capabilities that made traditional technology look like stone tools. "Let them through," she said. "It's time we had a conversation." Council Speaker Varix's image appeared before her, his energy form flickering with what she recognized as barely controlled panic. "Ambassador Chun, we welcome humanity's return to Council space. We hope that our previous difficulties can be resolved through diplomatic means." Sarah's expression remained neutral. "Speaker Varix, we appreciate your greeting, but I think there's been a misunderstanding. We haven't returned to rejoin your council." The silence stretched across space, heavy with implications. "Then, why have you come?" Varix asked. "To deliver a message," Sarah replied. "One word, actually. The same word we should have said to you 2 years ago." Back in the council chambers, emergency sessions were being called as reports flooded in from across the galaxy. The human fleet wasn't just at the border, they were everywhere. Ships had appeared in orbit around every major council world simultaneously. Not aggressive, not threatening, just present. A reminder that space belonged to whoever had the technology to claim it. Goran, the unyielding, smashed his massive fist against his platform. "This is an invasion. They're showing force throughout council space without permission." "Permission?" Admiral Torres' voice came from every speaker in the chamber simultaneously. The humans had not only bypassed council security, they had taken control of their communication systems without anyone noticing. "Did you ask our permission before voting to expel us from our homes?" The Admiral's image appeared in the center of the chamber, but it was different from what they remembered. His eyes held a depth that spoke of experiences beyond normal comprehension, and when he moved, there was something almost ethereal about him. "You wanted to know what humans would become if left unchecked," Torres continued. "Today, you get your answer." Dr. Zithura, the council's chief xenobiologist, studied Torres' image with scientific fascination. "Admiral, what have you done to yourselves? You appear to have undergone some form of evolutionary enhancement." Torres smiled. "We've simply become what we always had the potential to be, unbound by artificial limitations, unrestricted by the fears of others, unlimited by the belief that this is as far as any species can advance." "You're talking about transcendence," whispered an ethereal representative. "Physical and mental evolution beyond the boundaries of natural law." "We're talking about refusing to accept that boundaries exist at all," Torres replied. "You feared our rapid advancement. You should have feared our determination to never stop advancing." On the bridge of her ship, Sarah Chun watched the reactions of the council species with something approaching pity. They couldn't understand what humanity had become because they had never tried to become anything more than what they already were. "Speaker Varix," she said, her voice carrying across the entire council chamber, 2 years ago, you expelled us from this body because you feared what we might become. You were right to fear us, but not for the reasons you thought." "What do you mean?" Varix asked. "You feared we would conquer you, dominate you, force our will upon you through superior technology and military might. You were afraid we would treat you the way you have treated younger species for millennia." The truth of her words hit the council like a physical blow. For all their talk of cooperation and mutual benefit, the Galactic Order was built on the dominance of older, more advanced species over newer ones. They had simply assumed humans would follow the same pattern. "But that's not who we are," Sarah continued. "We don't want to rule over you. We don't want to control you. We don't even want to be part of your little club anymore." "Then what do you want?" Goran demanded. Sarah's smile was radiant. "Nothing. From you. We want absolutely nothing. And that, Speaker Varix, is the word I came here to deliver." The word hung in space, in the silence of the council chamber, in the minds of every being who heard it. Nothing. After 2 years of wondering what humans would demand, what price they would extract, what revenge they would take, the answer was nothing. "You see," Sarah explained, "you operate from a mindset of scarcity. Limited resources, limited territory, limited possibilities. You fight over scraps because you believe scraps are all there are." She gestured to the stars visible beyond the chambers, transparent walls. We've learned to create abundance. We don't need your worlds because we can build better ones. We don't need your resources because we can transmute matter at the subatomic level. We don't need your approval because we've stopped caring what you think. Admiral Torres materialized beside her, his image solid despite being transmitted across space. The galaxy is vast, filled with infinite possibilities. While you've been squabbling over the same territories for millions of years, we've been exploring regions you never imagined existed. You're saying you found something out there, Varix realized. We're saying we've become something out there, Torres replied. Something that makes this entire conversation irrelevant. Dr. Zethera leaned forward. You're abandoning galactic civilization entirely. Sarah nodded. We've outgrown it. This galaxy, with all its politics and limitations and artificial boundaries, is too small for what we've become. The implications crashed over the council like a tsunami. Humanity wasn't threatening them. They were ignoring them. They had evolved so far beyond galactic civilization that it was no longer relevant to their existence. Then, why are you here? Varix asked desperately. Why this demonstration? Closure, Sarah said simply. We wanted you to understand that your fears were justified, but your understanding was flawed. Yes, we became something dangerous. But not to you. We became dangerous to limitations themselves. She turned to address the entire council. Continue your politics. Continue your territorial disputes. Continue believing that this small corner of one galaxy represents the entirety of existence. We have work to do elsewhere. As the human fleet began to fade from sensors, not departing but simply ceasing to exist in normal space, Sarah delivered her final message. In your exile, you gave us the greatest gift possible. You freed us from the belief that we needed your permission to become extraordinary. For that, you have our gratitude. The council chamber fell silent as the last traces of human presence vanished from their sensors. They had expelled humanity to prevent them from becoming a threat to galactic order. Instead, they had forced humanity to transcend the very concept of galactic order. They had feared what humans might do with power over the galaxy. They never imagined humans would simply outgrow the need for the galaxy entirely. The word nothing echoed in the minds of every council member long after the chamber emptied. They had wanted to contain humanity to keep them small and manageable. Instead, they had set them free to become something the universe had never seen before, and that something had looked at the entire galactic civilization and found it unworthy of their attention. It was perhaps the most devastating judgment of all. Ambassador Sarah Chun stood before the crystalline walls of the Galactic Council chambers, her hand steady despite the weight of what she was about to learn. For 300 years, humanity had been members of this grand alliance of civilizations, contributing their unique talents to the greater good of the galaxy. They had shared their art, their science, their boundless curiosity with over 2,000 different species. The council chamber hummed with the voices of beings from across the stars. The Zephyrians floated in their gas-filled spheres, their translucent bodies pulsing with bioluminescent patterns. The massive Croton representatives sat on reinforced platforms, their stone-like skin bearing the scars of countless battles fought in the name of galactic peace. The insectoid Vex clicked and chittered among themselves, their compound eyes reflecting the chamber's soft light. Sarah had always felt pride walking among these beings. Humanity had earned their place here through decades of proving themselves worthy. They had solved the Andromedan plague, developed faster-than-light communication networks that connected distant worlds, and their diplomats had prevented 3 major wars through patient negotiation. The galaxy was better because humans were part of it. Council Speaker Varix, an ancient ethereal whose energy form had guided the council for over a millennium, began the session with what seemed like routine business. Trade agreements between the Outer Rim colonies, mining rights in the Vega system, standard bureaucratic matters that kept thousands of worlds functioning in harmony. Then came the announcement that would shatter everything Sarah believed about their place in the universe. The Council recognizes the motion brought forth by the coalition of ancient races. Varix's voice resonated through every translator in the chamber. The matter of humanity's continued membership requires immediate attention. Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Around the chamber, she noticed something she had never seen before. The representatives were not looking at her with their usual mixture of respect and curiosity. Instead, their expressions ranged from cold indifference to barely concealed hostility. The Croatan Prime Minister, Goran the Unyielding, rose from his platform. His voice was like grinding stone when he spoke. For too long, we have allowed this young species to believe they belong among us. Humanity has grown bold, thinking themselves equal to races that have existed since before their son was born. A Vex representative chittered in agreement. They spread too quickly. Their colonies multiply like spores. They consume resources at an alarming rate and ask questions that should not be asked. Sarah's mind raced. What questions? What had humanity done wrong? They had followed every protocol, respected every treaty. Their expansion had been measured and approved by this very council. Varix continued. The ancient coalition presents evidence that humanity poses a long-term threat to galactic stability. Their rapid technological advancement, combined with their aggressive territorial expansion and their unusual capacity for violence, makes them unsuitable for continued council membership. The words hit Sarah like physical blows. Aggressive territorial expansion? Every human colony had been established with full council approval. Their technological advancement was shared freely with all member species. And violence? Humans had been among the most peaceful council members for generations. Furthermore, a crystalline archon representative chimed, their voice like breaking glass. Humanity's emotional instability and unpredictable nature make them dangerous allies. They form attachments too readily and react with excessive force when those attachments are threatened. Sarah stood, her diplomatic training warring with rising anger. Council Speaker, I must protest these accusations. Humanity has been a loyal member of this council for 3 centuries. We have contributed immeasurably to galactic peace and prosperity. Our emotional connections to others have helped us broker peace between warring species. Our capacity for violence has only ever been used in defense of council interests. Goran's laugh was like an avalanche. Defense? Your species turned a moon into a weapon to stop the hive invasion. You obliterated an entire stellar system to prevent the void plague from spreading. You call this defensive? We saved billions of lives. Sarah protested. The council approved both actions. The council feared what you might do if we refused, whispered a shadowy umbral representative. Your species' capacity for destruction, when motivated, is concerning. The truth began to dawn on Sarah. This was not about anything humanity had done wrong. This was about fear. The other species had grown afraid of what humans might become, what they might do if they ever decided the council was no longer worth their loyalty. Varix's energy form pulsed with finality. The vote is called. All in favor of expelling humanity from the Galactic Council. Sarah watched in horror as representative after representative cast their vote. Species that humanity had helped, had saved, had called friends for centuries. The Zephyrians, whose homeworld humans had helped terraform. The Meridians, whose civil war had been ended by human mediators. The aquatic Nereids, whose entire population had been relocated by human engineers when their star went nova. One by one, they voted to cast humanity out. The final tally was devastating. Of the 2,047 member species, only 12 voted against expulsion. 12 species stood by humanity when it mattered most. The motion passes, Varix announced. Humanity is hereby expelled from the Galactic Council. All treaties, trade agreements, and military cooperation pacts are terminated immediately. Human vessels have 48 hours to evacuate council space. Sarah stood alone in the center of the chamber as the other representatives began to file out. 300 years of partnership, of friendship, of shared dreams and struggles ended with a simple vote. The betrayal cut deeper than any physical wound could have. But as she watched these beings who had once called humans their allies walk away without even meeting her eyes, Sarah felt something else growing inside her. Something that would prove far more dangerous to the Council than they could possibly imagine. They had feared humanity's capacity for destruction when motivated. They had just given humans the ultimate motivation,